Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Ann Barnes. I'm a family physician here in Northern Kentucky and have been a friend of Howard Storm's for many decades. I met Howard at an International Association for Near-Death Studies conference that they had here in Covington, Kentucky back in 1986, a year after Howard had his near-death experience. In hearing his story, I was shaken to the core. Before his testimony, I did not believe in hell. Why would a loving and forgiving God send anyone to hell? But Howard convinced me with his story that going to hell was not God's choice. It was his choice. Howard and I have worked together on many projects now with book groups and mission trips and educating young doctors about spirituality and about the importance of finding the right word in difficult conversations. And it was almost 30 years ago that Howard asked me to curate his art after he died. Well, he hasn't died yet, but he's had several medical conditions that have left him without any independence any longer. So he asked me to curate his art. So this video is being produced to introduce you to his work, his art, his insights and experiences, and to get the word out that we're selling the art. All the proceeds from the sales are going to go to Howard. I'm not collecting any commissions, and I'm doing this to help him as a friend. The art will be on Shopify. When it is sold, you can come by my home in Northern Kentucky or contact Safe Ship in Fort Thomas, Kentucky to arrange for it to be shipped to you. If you have any questions about the art, please contact me at howardstormart@gmail.com. I hope you enjoy this video.
So Howard, you have a lot of trees in your paintings. Do you have a particular passion or feeling for trees?
I am a tree hugger to the nth degree. I have done lots of paintings of trees because I love trees, and I've also done a lot of sculptures from trees. But I want to add, I have never taken down a live tree for two reasons. One, I wouldn't want to cut down a live tree, and secondly, dead trees that have been standing for a while are less likely to crack because the wood has dried up. When I have planted trees, grown trees, pruned trees, embraced trees, carved trees, one of the things that I have discovered is that they are living things. To my astonishment, I have learned in the last year that scientists who have been studying trees now know that trees communicate with other trees through their root system, through chemicals. Trees communicate with other trees. Now,
it's amazing.
My sense that trees were living things and that somehow, not the same way we do, but somehow they had feelings and they had thoughts. And I don't know how that works, but they do some kind of processing to send messages to one another. So you can call that thinking or not. And trees really do respond to the way we handle them. Like one of the things that I have done with trees is when I go out, I pack them. And I know that they like that. They like me to touch them. Now, I know this all sounds a bit woo-woo, crazy, nuts. That's my experience, and I'm standing on it.
So have you ever had a tree communicate something distinct to you? What was that?
Okay. I was doing a slightly larger than life wood carving of a man out of a big beautiful hunk of walnut, and My good friend at the time was there, sitting in my studio as I was carving, reading a book, paying no attention to me. He just came by for the company. And all of a sudden, the tree that I was carving said, "I am Menelaus." And I'd never heard of that. So I turned to my friend and I said, "Have you ever heard of Menelaus?" And my friend said, "Of course, stupid. He was the husband of Helen of Troy." And I went, "Oh." And he said, "Why did you ask me about Menelaus?" And I said, "Never mind, because I wasn't about to admit to him that the tree just told me."
They would put you on medicine for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there are other instances too.
Can you share another one?
No, that's good.
Okay, that's...
I want to tell you, I was hesitant.
Another tree, okay.
Yeah, I want to come out of the closet on this one. Down in my backyard, there was a very big old ash tree. And when my kids were little, I made a tree fort in it, which they loved for several years, and then they outgrew it. And then eventually, I took the lumber off the tree because it really didn't belong there. But the tree went up about 6 feet, and then there were big, strong branches that went on. Anyways, every time I looked at this tree, I would see Christ crucified. Eventually, the tree died, and now this big, beautiful ash tree is down there, dead. And every time I saw it, this was before I was a Christian, when I was still an atheist. Every time I'd look at it, I would see Christ crucified. So finally, this went on for years, and it was haunting me because the tree wanted me to carve it and to fully reveal Christ crucified in the way that it was formed. So finally, after several years of that tree bugging me, I decided, okay, so I had to cut the tree down and then pull that log up the hill to the back of my house where my studio and all my tools were. And I used a come-along, and I would tie the come-along off to like another tree, and I would crank that trunk, which probably weighed 400 or 500 pounds, up, like 10 or 15 feet, then reattach the come-along to something and crank it up. It took me all day to get that tree up the hill. And then when I carved it, I was like a man possessed. And I did a life-size Christ crucified out of that tree in 1 month, which it should have taken me 3 months. But I was just carving like a madman, and the tree was just, the interesting thing about when you do subtractive carving is that you have to imagine what your goal is, what's inside the wood or the stone or whatever when you do subtract. And you got to not carve too much, because once you take it off, it's gone, right? Anyways, I did that carving in a month, and there I had Christ crucified. I'm an atheist, right? So we had an exhibit of faculty artwork at Northern Kentucky University, so I put that in along with some other pieces, and people would come up to me and say, "Why did you do a carving of Jesus Christ?" And I said, "Because he was a great man." And they go, "Oh, okay." Walk away. Well, anyway, so I had that carving, and I had no idea what to do with it. It's just this big, giant, life-size carving of Jesus, and I parked him in my office at NKU. He was very dominant in my office, confronting me all the time, making me think. And one day someone came by and they said they had told a priest in Ashland, Kentucky, who worked at the federal penitentiary there, who had a chapel, about it. And he said that he would like to see a picture of it. So we sent him a picture of it, and he asked if he could have it. So he came up with a couple of convicts with a pickup truck and took my Christ crucified, and he hangs in the chapel at the federal penitentiary in Ashland, Kentucky.
Wow, what a story.
And the whole time, of course, I'm thinking about who is Jesus? What was Jesus? What did he really do? And not coming up with a lot of answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
Jesus existed.
that story is not just about a tree whispering at me. That's about a tree controlling my behavior.
It's very interesting. When Jesus existed, we just have to decide for ourselves who he was.
Yep. I spent 1 year as an artist in residence in Roswell, New Mexico, and my home and studio was right on the edge of the desert. The landscape there was unlike anything I had ever known in my life. It was just as flat as a billiard table and stretched about 60 miles to the west to a mountain range. I was very taken by the openness and the atmosphere of the desert because it was so beautiful and so serene and so incredibly simple. But the more you studied it, the more complex and sophisticated the desert landscape is because it changes constantly from minute to minute in the colors and in the intensities. So this sun on the horizon was my fascination with the beauty of the desert and the sunlight bathing it all and giving it all life. The desert is very much alive, although it doesn't appear to be. It's full of life. It's just subtle, and one has to look for it. And so I don't see this landscape as bleak or empty. I see it as full of the beauty of God's creation and of the light that I experienced in the desert.
Okay, so we're talking about your art, and I noticed that you have a lot of paintings of a black dog. Can you tell me about the black dog?
I am a crazy dog lover. I've had not only a dog, but at times several dogs all my life, from when I was a little boy to the present. And I have always related to dogs. I have told many people, and I have told my wives many times, I'm a dog. If you want to understand me, just think of me as a dog. And the human side of me, there's a spiritual side to me that is not a dog, okay? The human side of me is not that different from a dog, you know?
So how do you mean? I mean, how are you the same as a dog humanly?
I'm driven by my desires. My desire for food, my desire for companionship, my desire to fight or flight, my desire for sex. I was driven all my life, basically not really any different than a dog.
And so the paintings of a dog is really you in that picture?
That side of me.
Okay.
That side of all of us, all men and all women, because everybody, part of us, we're animals. And people that don't recognize their animal self, they are absolutely hopeless because they can never transcend the animal self until they recognize the animal self. That's the whole point. And Paul, in his letters, talks about that a lot. But he uses, instead of the animal self, he talks about the flesh versus the spirit. I'm talking about the dog versus the spirit.
Okay.
And I don't mean, I love dogs, so I don't mean anything, there's not anything bad with them, it's just we have to recognize that's who we are.
Okay.
Many, many years ago, a friend gave me this plaster statue of the woman. I thought it was beautiful, and I've always been intrigued by it because, of course, it's highly idealized and it represents a very romantic vision of a woman. I do not see this woman as a sexual object. I see her more as an idealization of the human condition, of just really capturing beauty and serenity. So this painting is about contrast because there's also a dog in this painting. And I'm a dog lover, so what I'm about to say may sound like I am demeaning the nature of dogs, but I'm just trying to be really truthful. There's two kinds of dogs in the world, the domesticated dogs and the wild dogs. The setting of this painting, the forest, this is a wild dog. And the wild dog is contemplating this statue of a woman. It's conflicting for this dog because dogs see and smell things in order to know whether to eat them. And dogs are not at all reluctant to attack and kill prey as long as it's not way bigger or way more dangerous than they are. So the other things that dogs are looking for beside food sources is they're looking for other dogs to mate with. So this dog is in its mind contemplating, what does this figure represent? And of course, ultimately he's going to leave it alone because it's of no use to him. And I see the dog as representing the bestiality in humankind. We are looking around the world for things to exploit, either for food or for sexual gratification. And that's really basic human instinct. And anyone who denies that is not really self-aware of some of their basic feelings and needs. And beauty, represented by this woman, this idealized beauty, is that something that we seek out and look for in the world? As an artist, I have been concerned with beauty all my life, and it's been an important part of my search for life. Beauty means nothing to a dog. It means nothing to our basic instincts. One of the things that I've learned going to art museums is that there are people in the art museum to look at the artwork. And then there are the tourists who don't look at the artwork. They might take a picture of it, typically a selfie, with them in the middle of the painting, which is a travesty, and they have absolutely no interest in the art and they're extremely rude and have no interest in the people that are trying to study the artwork. They're incredibly rude and have no interest in the aesthetics of the art in the museum. This painting represents beauty and bestiality.
Also, you've painted a lot of buildings, and many of the houses do not have windows or doors. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I wanted something to represent the human need for security and identity. Now, in my experience in this world, everybody's identity is very much formed by where they live. And of course, the American dream is to own a house. It's been that way from the Pilgrims to today. Now, some people can't own a house because they own an apartment, but I just felt that that idea of the dwelling was us seeking our identity and our security. And the reason why I didn't do any windows and doors in them, because I think that part of what we do when we create our self-identity, part of it is we close ourselves off from change and from the rest of the world. So it becomes, in a way, kind of a prison. Or to put it in other words, our ego meaning that conscious sense of who we are, protects itself by closing off to the rest of the world. What God asks us to do is something completely different, which is to put the interests and the needs of other people ahead of our own. And that's what a Christian is supposed to do and what God calls us to do. But our ego is just the opposite. It's only concerned with its own needs and closes itself off from the interests and needs of others. I spent several years doing paintings of a solitary house. The reason why I chose this image was that for me it symbolized the human desire to have a place of comfort and safety and to exist in. The idea of having a home for me represented the primary desire of the human heart, to have security and comfort in this world. This painting of the house is fairly typical of the house paintings that I did. There's no details on the house, just a simple box with a roof, and in this case, 3 windows. For me, this house represents, in a very simple way, everything that I wanted out of life. Was, to put it in a word, a home. And I am presuming that that's what probably almost everyone in the world wants is a home. I know that there are some people who are homeless, but I suspect that's because of circumstances beyond their control, and they would like nothing more than a home. In working with homeless people, their great hope in life was to have a source of food and to have a home. So these paintings of a house for me represented the real meaning of what it is to be a human being, to have this place of comfort and hopefully love, hopefully support, hopefully security, hopefully giving us everything that we need to not just exist, but to thrive in.
There's a barn in Fort Thomas that you painted a lot. You
Yeah,
said
you have one of them.
I do. Okay, yeah. So where is it? in
Well,
Fort Thomas?
it's actually not a barn, it's a carriage house.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's next to a mansion, and it's on Shaw Lane.
On what lane?
Shaw.
Okay.
And I've heard from people that there were several times when people were thinking of tearing it down because they had no use for it, because it was built as a carriage house to store your horses and carriages. And every time it's been kind of rescued and rehabbed because of its historical importance, you know, the world that was before automobiles. Anyways, it's a beautiful building, and I've always loved it, and I did some paintings of it.
Okay. You had permission to come on the property and just.
I did it from across the street.
Oh, okay. So you weren't there.
Yeah, I was there, but I was not literally on their property.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for sharing your time with me and watching the videos with Howard talking about his art and inspiration. One caveat is that not all of the art that I have posted on the videos is actually for sale. A lot of it has already been sold, but I have a ton of art that we have for sale. Again, it's going to be on Shopify, but probably not until November 2025. In the meantime, I'm going to keep posting videos of Howard on YouTube so that you can learn about his art and his inspiration. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at howardstormart@gmail.com. All right, I hope to see you soon. Thanks.